Hey everybody, this is Mike, and here we go. The big one, my number 20 through number 1 games from 2024. One of, I think, the best years for solo and co-op gaming of all time. And if you didn't watch my first video, for some disclaimers and explanations, first of all, I am including some expansions here, but only if they change up the core gameplay of the original in some major way. These are all games released in 2024. If they are releasing wide in 2025, they got a half spot on the ranking, so like 12.5 in between 13 and 12. And my plan is to rank them again in 2025 against other games that actually released fully in that year. And of course, this is just my opinion. A lot of this is based on playing it with my family, so there are a lot of games here that my kids enjoyed. But enough of that. These are some of the finest games I've ever played. Let's talk about them and hear my number 20 to number 1 for 2024. So first at number 20 is another expansion. This is the Monolith expansion for Skytear Horde, although this is also a standalone, so I guess it kind of zones category. And yeah, this one got so high for me, not just because I love Skytear Horde, but I also love Ashes Reborn. But this expansion really improved the game greatly. It made the monsters, the enemies you're facing, even more modular. It made the enemies more balanced at different difficulty levels because the swinginess of the cards was greatly reduced. And it also added a lot more tactics to the game because you have to use actions to move your characters around in the lanes, so the combat became a lot more engaging. So this just made a game that I like even better, and I'm super happy to be continuing to play Skytear Horde. I backed the newest expansion, the campaign one as well, so this is a game that'll be in my collection for a long time. Number 20, Skytear Horde's Monolith. Next at number 19 is Stone Spine Architects. This is a competitive and solo game of dungeon building. You're trying to lay out these cards and draft them in such a way to earn as many victory points as possible. And this game just really worked for me. It's quick to play, it's easy to teach, it has tons of variety in the challenge cards and the combinations that come out for you. And the mix of drafting cards and then sort of bidding on items works out great. The solo mode is really good and makes you think even more deeply about your plays. Just a really solid, quick little Euro experience. That is number 19, Stone Spine Architects. Next at 18 is Harrow County. This is a competitive and solo game with asymmetric factions fighting to complete different objectives. The cube-based combat is really cool. The factions are super diverse. And the solo play, I will say, is maybe not the strongest way to play the game. It really sings at 2 and 3 player play, but it's also a really cool puzzle and does have good variety play to play. So yes, I mainly recommend this one for competitive, but solo is a lot of fun too, and just a really great asymmetric experience. That is my number 18, Harrow County. Next at 17 is an expansion and standalone, Kinfire Delve Scorn Stockade. And why is this so high, even though it's pretty much the same thing as the first Kinfire Delve? Well, 2 reasons. First of all, I think Scorn Stockade is the finest out of the 3 games, out of the 3 releases. I think the heroes are the most interesting without being too powerful, and I think this is easily the best enemy deck and the best boss. So if you're going to get any set in the game, I think Scorn Stockade is the best one to start. But then on top of that, since this was the second set to be released, this was the first time that the game allowed you to play with 3 or 4 players. And I'm on record as thinking that Kinfire Delve is really good for solo, but I think it's an awesome game for cooperative play, and especially with more players, the merrier, because you're all deciding when to contribute cards, how to shepherd your resources carefully. I think the game's great for any number of players, but yeah, the fact that Scorn Stockade let you increase it to the higher count, as well as having great characters and great boss, makes it a pretty excellent set overall. That is number 17, Kinfire Delve Scorn's Stockade. Next at number 16 is Earth Under Siege. This is a solo and cooperative campaign game, very similar to the XCOM video game series, where you're tactically stealthing and moving through different dungeons and compounds. And this one is just great. It has excellent tactical play, great card play, lots of variety in how missions play out, just tons of missions to play in general. The stealth is great. The dice system is really cool, gives you lots of mitigations so that if you don't love randomness, you have a lot of ways to deal with it. So yeah, I think this game is excellent. Lots of people should check it out. That is Earth Under Siege, my number 16. Next at 15 is SAS Rogue Regiment, another stealth game, and actually I was very torn on which way to go between these 2 games. But Rogue Regiment slightly beat out Earth Under Siege just because for my personal preferences, the fact that this one is a one-off game instead of a campaign, and even though you can play Earth Under Siege one-off, but this one is strictly focused on one-off play, did make me happy because it's a little bit easier to get to my table. But yeah, this one is more of a stealth puzzle than Earth Under Siege, although combat is still pretty fun, and there is still a lot of variety in your agents and how you kind of tackle things. This one is also very, very friendly to building your own missions. That's kind of one of the key ways to play the game. And it's super easy to throw together a few of the tiles, give yourself some objectives, and get to it. But yeah, just tons of stealth goodness here. One of my top stealth experiences, along with Earth Under Siege from this year or really any year. That's my number 15, SAS Rogue Regiment. Next at number 14 is World Breakers, the Indigo Sisterhood. And really, I'm talking about the World Breaker series in general here, including the original one. What was it, like Rise of the Khanate or something like that? But yes, this is a very Magic the Gathering-esque card game with 1v1 competitive play or a solo campaign. You start out with 10 scenarios in the base game, and then the Indigo Sisterhood adds, I think, 8 more. But it's like a totally different style of campaign. The solo automa, the solo mode is different in each of the base game and the expansion. And this game is so great for picking up and playing anytime. I brought it with me on my Christmas vacation and played it like 20 times on the floor when all the tables were taken up. A single game can take 10 to 15 minutes, but at the same time, the campaign mode is really cool. You're slowly upgrading your deck, kind of simplifying the deck construction you would have in competitive play, while the AI also upgrades. The scenarios are quite varied with different goals and different conditions. So while I wouldn't necessarily say that World Breakers reaches the pinnacle of solo cooperative kind of card play of Skytear Horde and Ashes Reborn, it's faster to play than either of those, and it has that really cool campaign mode and varied scenarios that they don't have. So yeah, this is a big recommend. My number 14, World Breakers, the original game, and the Indigo Sisterhood expansion. Moving on to number 13, this is Landmarks. I'm going to have several of these more casual games in this list because I've just had a ton of fun with them with my kids. So yeah, if you haven't seen Landmarks, this is a cooperative game, although there is a team-based competitive mode. I've never played that, but it's a cooperative game where you are writing words on little tiles and trying to help your team figure out the right spot to place those tiles so you can explore the island and pick up bonus tokens and things while avoiding negative spots. And it's very simple. It feels a bit like Codenames or So Clover, some of those other games, but with a more thematic spin on it. I just love this one. It's been a hit with basically every group I've ever shown it to. It is another one of those games I can just bring to like any game night or really just any family gathering and have a good time with it. That is Landmarks, my number 13. Next at number 12 is Dead Cells, the board game adaptation of the roguelite video game. And this game is really cool because it does create a board game roguelite experience better than I think anything else I've ever seen, in that you are constantly unlocking stuff and leveling up and starting new runs, and runs take maybe a max of 30 minutes if you really get far, like all the way to the boss. And I will say this one is as highly ranked as it is, partially because my kids just loved it and kept requesting to have it played, but also the combat is really dynamic and quick and fun. The leveling up is really exciting, and like most roguelites, it kind of changes game to game, the combos and bonuses you discover. Now, one thing holding this game back a little bit from being in my top 10 is that the rules are not as clear as I would like. There's been some errata and changes, and even in the official FAQ they released, I didn't like some of the rules calls. I think they actively made like some parts of the game a little bit less fun. So that'll probably all get shaken out by the time that most people are playing the game, and if they do more content for it, I'm sure things will get figured out there as well. Still super easy to just play the game and enjoy it, but yeah, those were like little minor complaints that kept it out of my top 10. That is Dead Cells, my number 12. Next at number 11 is Tranquility the Ascent. And man, did this one come out of nowhere. I think when Peter and Jerry went to Gen Con, they got a free copy of this at like a Lucky Duck event, and then it just sat in their house because they didn't think it was worth anything. I borrowed it and gave it a play, and man, I couldn't stop playing. Between me and with my son and with my wife, this is one of my most played games of the year, which helps because an entire play of it is only like 10 minutes. But yeah, you're trying to lay out cards carefully, either cooperatively or in solo, to build up this mountain. And, you know, it's not the most strategic game in the world, but it has lots of variety with the different modules. Like you might have to get goats up the mountain or build a certain path up the mountain or fulfill these little mini quests. And the card play is consistently tense and fun the entire game through. I just love this one. It's going to stick around forever. That is my number 11, Tranquility the Ascent. But here we go, my top 10 of the year. Man, what a top 10 it is. Let's get right into it. Number 10 is Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. This is a 2-player cooperative trick-taking game. And I love trick-takers. You might hear about another one soon. But this is now my favorite for 2-player play. I don't like the crew as much as this one when it's 2-player. Fox in the Forest Duet works great, but is not as good. Sail didn't work for me as well. This one is just tons of fun. Lots of variety of different scenarios. Really good, tense card play gameplay. Very interesting, unique mechanics where you are changing the relative value of the suits. You also have these cool powers from potion cards. It's just great. If you like a trick taker, you got to give this one a try. That's my number 10, Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. Moving on to number 9, we're talking about The Mandalorian Adventures, the board game based on the Mandalorian TV series. And gosh, I really enjoyed this one. Now, disclaimer, I loved the previous game from, I think, the same designer and the same publisher that used some similar mechanics, which was the Initiative, but this one kind of amps up those mechanics in a more thematic way. I like the action system here where you're playing cards cooperatively and trying not to sort of like pop them and have enemies activated until you're ready. There's huge diversity in the different characters. And I know some people, like looking at the comments on the game and such, thought there wasn't much variety in the missions. I highly disagree. So you've got 4 maps. That's kind of the big thing that was a negative for people, but tons of different ways to play on those maps with huge amounts of mix and match missions you can add to them. And then they've been releasing even more missions for free on the website, including, I know some people didn't like that some of the missions had like sort of a hidden traitor element, but they've been releasing fully cooperative versions of those same missions. So yeah, I think this game has legs. I think it is just a ton of fun, very tactical. And I know now that the second Mandalorian game is announced, and I cannot wait. I hope you can combine the two to have even more variety. But even if it's like kind of its own standalone thing doing something else, I'm still excited to play it. That is my number 9, The Mandalorian Adventures. Next at number 8 is the highest ranked expansion for the year. And yeah, this is my number 8 game, which is pretty crazy. And that is the Feast of Hemlock Vale, specifically the campaign expansion for Arkham Horror. The Investigator expansion had some cool stuff. It brought back the Blessing and Curse mechanic that I did really enjoy. But yeah, why is a campaign expansion for Arkham Horror my number 8 when I've played so many of these before? And that is because, as I mentioned in my review, I think this is the best Arkham Horror, the card game campaign expansion I have ever played. I think it is the best campaign they have designed for the game. Now, I haven't finished every campaign, so don't take that recommendation with a grain of salt. Like, I didn't finish the Snow one, I didn't finish the Innsmouth one, but I've played through almost every campaign, and yes, this one is just so good. I love the way that it has you kind of befriending people in the town. I love that you have some control over when you go to missions, and that changes up how the missions resolve. A couple complaints: if you don't use the app that I use, I forget what it's called, but there's this great Arkham app that keeps track of your campaign stuff. It can be a lot to track. The ending can be a little bit grueling to get through. But besides that, yeah, this is just Arkham perfection. I love this one. I played through it twice within the course of like 5 days. That should tell you something. That's hours and hours of playtime. So again, that is the Feast of Hemlock Vale, the expansion for Arkham Horror, the card game, my number 8. Next at number 7 is Agamonia, a fantastic adventure game. And I'm going to be saying that for pretty much every game after this one. But Agamonia has some of the best exploration I've ever seen in a game of this type. Just the excitement of moving to these little locations and discovering things and interacting with them. And the resource management is really fun. The action choice, the initiative system, just lots to love here. Now, it is down at number 7 when at first I thought it might be my number 1 of the year because the combat can get a little grindy. The scenarios have sometimes too harsh timers that don't really let you explore to your heart's content. And like late games, sometimes going to the city and stuff can feel a little onerous. But when you're in a scenario playing and having that exploration goodness, it's just so awesome. That is Agamonia, my number 7. Next at number 6 is Slay the Spire, the board game. Really great video game adaptations this year. So this is a one-off or campaign-ish deck building game for 1 to 4 players, cooperative. And this one is awesome. I mean, I will say it's pretty much the same as the video game, and the video game is also awesome, so they didn't have to put in as much work, although they did an amazing job like simplifying and kind of fine-tuning things from the video game and making them work for a board game space. I will say, like I said in my review, I do prefer Slay the Spire solo with the video game. It's faster, it tracks things, it's simpler, there's more variety in things, but the co-op experience is so dang good, just so good, that I fully recommend this as now one of my top cooperative deck building games of all time. If you like deck building, you should definitely check it out. The combat is great. The leveling is great. Trying out the different classes with how varied they are is amazing. Slay the Spire is just awesome. That is my number 6. And we're not getting to number 5 yet because here's one of those 2025-ish games, the first one on the list, and that is the Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game. Oh my gosh, y'all. I don't know where this will end up next year. Right now it's at the 5.5 slot, but this is currently challenging the crew for my favorite cooperative trick-taking game of all time. I'm not going to call that matchup yet. Let's see how things feel in 2025 when the game is really fully releasing. I think it's out for most people in January. But this game is just so good. Now, I am a big Lord of the Rings fan. Because of this game, started rereading The Fellowship of the Ring. I'm actually reading it to my 9 and 12-year-old right now. So there is some, of the theme dynamics here. But the fact that there is a theme and that I care about it and see it in the gameplay already pushes it way above the crew, which has no theme that I care about at all. But yes, the gameplay here is great. It has really good solo play. How many games can say that? Solo trick-taking play that works really well. It's good at 2-player. Again, not quite as good as Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard, but 3 or 4-player is fantastic. I just love this one. If you're a trick-taking fan, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, if you're an anything fan, give it a try. Again, this game might be my number 1 by next year. I don't know how it'll shake out, but for now it's my 5.5. That is the Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game. But getting to my actual number 5, we've got Bomb Busters. Ooh, what a good cooperative game this is. You are trying to cooperatively cut wires by finding matches with other players, sort of Go Fish style. And while the base gameplay is fantastic, there's so much cool unlockable stuff here that amps up the game more and more. Like a lot of the games I've mentioned on this list have had cool unlocks and things, but I don't think anything goes quite as far as Bomb Busters. Now, yes, sometimes there are scenarios that are a little bit dull because they just repeat stuff you've already done before, but for the most part, that's not the case. And, you've got over 60 scenarios in here. So the game certainly is majorly worth the value. It's just great for those cooperative fans. That is my number 5, Bomb Busters. And here's another 2025 game in my 4.5 slot. This is Iridia, The Paths We Dare Tread. And this one I'm really not sure where it'll fall next year because I did get it very, very late in the year. But this one is fantastic. If you didn't see my review, the exploration and adventure is great. The combat is very quick, but a lot of fun. The different paths and classes are great to try out. And it's just one of the most beautiful, well-produced, thoughtfully produced games I have ever seen in my life. So yeah, again, this could, like Fellowship of the Ring, be my number 1 game for next year when it gets officially seeded. But for now, it's right up there near the top. My 4.5 game, Iridia, The Paths We Dare Tread. Moving on to number 4, another fantastic adventure campaign game. This one more of a dungeon crawler. We've got Tidal Blades 2. Holy crud, this might be one of the finest dungeon crawler systems I've ever seen. It's got the best initiative system I've ever seen. It's got really varied and interesting scenarios, great character diversity. And the biggest thing, of course, is this Nexus grid where you're laying out your cards and building combos on your own to play in the world and defeat enemies. It is just such a cool system. I love pretty much everything about this game. Really no complaints. That's my number 4, Tidal Blades 2. And then our final 2025-ish game is Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era, the Chip Theory Games one. So it was my 3.5. And I will say, compared to Iridia and Fellowship of the Ring, I've had this one for many more months, but with my crazy schedule, I haven't gotten to play it a ton since I first covered it. But yeah, this one is awesome. It is basically Too Many Bones 2.0, and Too Many Bones was already a top game for me, and I think this one improves on it in pretty much every way, especially with the new skill dice and cooldown system that makes leveling up and trying out different builds so fun. Now, this is sometimes a longer game than Too Many Bones, and you don't have the unique gear locks that can make that one so exciting, but still, this is one of the best tactical adventure, combat-y systems out there. You also get great variety and fun side quests and locations and stuff. I hope they keep expanding this one and get even more content because it will be just so much fun to keep on playing in this world. But yeah, this is my 3.5, and this one is more confident because, again, I've had this one for a while, so you can call this it's almost my number 4 or whatever. But that is Elder Scrolls Betrayal of the Second Era. It is awesome. All right, and now getting to my top 3. First thing we have at number 3, Leviathan Wilds. And really, this could have been my number 2 or number 1. All these games are amazing. I was kind of going back and forth on which one to put where. But this game is probably the most replayable of all the games on my top 5 because it's not like a big campaign game with limited scenarios. Yes, you have these different Leviathans to climb on in battle, but there's so many ways to modularly alter them with mutations and stuff. But this game is just amazing. I love the co-op play here. I love it for solo, although not as much of a true solo mode. I like playing just two-handed. The different Leviathans are great. The amazing card play and combos you can pull off, boosting each other. It is one of my favorite experiences of the year, one of my favorite cooperative games of the year, easily. That is number 3, Leviathan Wilds. And my number 2 game, this was my number 1 for forever. I really flip-flop back and forth on this, but here we have the 7th Citadel. Whew. I love the 7th Continent, like parts of it. The exploration, kind of like Agamonia, but in a different way, is some of the best out there. I love the action system and how like thematic everything is. 7th Citadel, though, just improves on everything. The exploration is better. There's more story. It's more contained, so you kind of know where to go, so you don't just wander aimlessly. The story is actually really compelling with cool branching options. So even though there's only 2 main quest lines in the main box, you can play them multiple times. Exploring the world feels super engaging and fun, leveling up, different character classes, and things you can try out. Man, I adore this one, and I went all in on the expansion content that's coming because I just want to play more of it. So that is the 7th Citadel, my number 2. So what is my number 1? Here it is, Fateforge, Chronicles of Khan. Oh my gosh. I had such a blast with this game. Now, full disclosure, kind of like, I think it was my game of last year, 2022. This is one that I played with my son just non-stop. So that certainly raises it in my estimation. But the storyline in this game, fantastic. The branching choices, awesome. Love all of that. And then the dice-based combat with so many cool combos to build, different characters to try out, so many different scenarios, just awesome. It's quick, it's dynamic. Now, is it random sometimes? Do you have bad luck? Is it really, really tough sometimes? You can die and fail forward? Yes, but we enjoy it despite all of that. And now they have a battle mode, so you can play one off. They've put more options in the app to kind of look back at things you missed, whereas before it was really tough to do that. They added an easy mode if the game is too challenging. So they've just continued to tinker with it to make it one of the best games out there. And again, me and my son played it until the wheels fell off. So can't say enough good things about my number 1 game of 2024. This was a crazy year, so that's saying a lot. Fateforge, Chronicles of Khan. All right, well, there you go. 2024 is done. Again, I think one of the greatest years, at least for my taste, of gaming ever. Just so much good stuff here. Any of the top, 8, 9, 10 games here could have been my number 1 game in most gaming years, so that's saying something. But thanks for watching, everybody, and here's to a great 2025 of even more gaming goodness. We'll see you at the next stop.